What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today I have something special for you. This is a deck that I've been working on it for quite some time now. It's just an interesting theory that I thought it might actually work, and in testing I think it has been working really well. So today we are profiling a Dark Magician Red Eyes deck, and this might seem a little bit random because you'll be thinking that Red Eyes has always been a part of Dark Magician because of Dragoon, but no, this is actually a Dark Magician deck that plays an actually big Red Eyes package that I think it adds a lot more to the deck that I didn't really think it could come up as a really good strategy, but to be honest, it has been working really well, so stick with me for this profile. You're going to enjoy it because this is basically combining two of the most iconic and nostalgic things about Yu-Gi-Oh! Into one cohesive deck that actually works really well. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with the monsters, we have of course two copies of Dark Magician. If you're playing cards like Relive Fusion, Anaconda, you don't need to play more than two because you can send this to the graveyard whenever you want and then get it back with access to your Eternal Soul, but there's also one more card you can play now on top of Eternal Soul that basically does the exact same thing as Eternal Soul, which is also searchable as well, which is complementing the Red Eyes package you're going to see once I get to the trap cards, but we have to talk about that a little bit later. For now, we have to keep going for the cards that you don't really want to see, but you have to play just because they just add so much. The next card is the one copy of Dark Magician Girl. You send her with your Magician Souls. You basically need this to get to draw two with your Soul Servant, and it's also a good card to be able to float with your Dark Magicians because it's a monster that, even though it has been power crept by Dragoon quite a bit, it's a monster that in some scenarios might come up, and I always want to be able to float with this card because it just gives you so much value, being able to banish card with your circle whenever you do that, and the ability to keep getting you more cards. It's a monster that you don't want to summon too often, but if you summon it, it will be actually really valuable if you cannot actually summon Dragoon. And we have the one copy of the Vanilla Red Eyes. Now, this is the one Red Eyes card that's actually the brick of the deck, but the thing is, you don't really care about breaks too much now because of Illusion of Chaos. You can search anything you want and then put all these cards back to your deck and then get them out of your deck with the means you actually want to, like cards with Red Eyes Fusion or Red Eyes Insight, so you don't really mind drawing them as long as you can get access to Illusion of Chaos. Of course, they're not great if you draw them, they don't do anything, but at least if you draw cards that are considered breaks, if they're dragon monsters, like worst case scenario, you can search as Secrets of Dark Magic, and if you have the Dark Magician as well, then you can make Dragoon this way, but still, all these cards with the package that I'm going to show you concerning the Red Eyes, it makes all this engine much better. Now, for the cards that you actually want to see in your hand, we have of course three copies of Magician Souls. This is a card you absolutely have to max out. I don't see a reason why you would not. This card just gives you everything. It's a free special summon on the field for Anaconda. It gets you access to your Dark Magician Girl to draw two with your Soul Servant once you send your Dark Magician to the grave with Red Eyes Fusion. It gets you more cards to draw, so even if you draw multiple copies of cards that you either cannot use or don't want to use, like cards like multiple copies of Red Eyes Fusion, Red Eyes Insight, multiple copies of Preparation of Rites, you can just discard them and try to dig for more cards. So an amazing card overall. We have two copies of Magician's Rod. Now the thing is that this card is a really good card, but if you're trying to play more copies of other normal summons in your Dark Magician deck, then you don't really want to max this out, just because you can actually brick on too many normal summons, and this basically goes for any type of deck. You don't want to play too many normal summons, especially ones that are searchable, so I am playing another normal summon, which is not Yugioh Diviner, which I've been seeing in some profiles here and there. I've been enjoying this card as well, but for this profile, there's a much better normal summon you can play on, because Yugioh and Diviner basically don't belong to a certain archetype in this particular deck. They're just monsters that can be used to go for one card Dragoons or have other uses like sending maybe NTSS to pop cards, which is still really good, but when you're playing this particular build I'm going to show you once I get to the Red Eyes package, there is one more normal summon you can play that just gives you much more value. So this is why you don't want to play three copies of Rod, because you can break on too many normal summons. For the rituals of the deck, we have two copies of Illusion of Chaos. I've explained this before, and this is why this card is just not good at three, because if you open multiple copies of this card, the best thing you can do with it is maybe use it for a fusion summon, but you cannot send it to the graveyard with cards like Magician Souls to draw card because it's not a monster. You need to play multiple copies of Preparation of Rites and just two copies of Illusion of Chaos. I think this is the best ratio because you just have all these cards to search it, and then you can keep it in your hand whenever you want to, so it's not like you have to get rid of it when you use its effect. So if you want follow-up, you can always keep it in your hand. If you don't really think you need follow-up, you can put it back. It's an amazing card at 2. I think it's the perfect number at 2. We also play one copy of Sarevis. It's another searchable card with Preparation of Rites that can save you from cards like Veiler or Imperm. Resolving this Anaconda is very crucial for the strategy because Anaconda is basically the biggest choke point of the deck. If you don't resolve Anaconda, then you're basically screwed, so you need to be able to protect it as consistently as possible, which is why some people even play the Sky Striker package, so you can search Eagle Booster with Engage, which is fine, but I don't think it's that necessary, especially when you're combining the deck with either types of engine to make it more spicy and make it more fun, which is what I'm trying to do with this particular build. I'm not saying that this is the most competitive way to play the deck, because there are of course cards like the Striker engine using the Dogmatica package, maybe even other staples that you can play in the deck, but it's just that I've been finding this build so fun, and since it works so well, I thought I might share it with you. So yeah, one Saurav is for that purpose. We have one copy of Apprentice Illusion Magician. This card comes up only when you want to make sure that you don't lose to a card like Forbidden Droplets, because Dragoon is a very powerful card, but the thing is, Forbidden Droplets is not only good just because it negates Dragoon, it makes it easier to get over, because by having its attack points, it makes it a 1500 monster. It's very easy to get rid of it with just an attack, but if you search this card, and you can basically protect your Dragoon from battle even after getting Forbidden Droplet, then you can basically protect it for a turn and then hopefully get a turn back. Your Dragoon will have its effect back and you will be able to push for game. It's another special summon if you wanted to go for Anaconda if you don't have anything else. It's a decent card. Searching Dark Magician can sometimes be useful, but mainly you're going to be searching the Dark Magician and then putting it right back into your deck for Illusion of Chaos to get another search and keeping your Illusion of Chaos in your hand. Now, for the Red Eyes package, this is the part that I've been enjoying so much for the deck. Now, first of all, the extra normal summon I'll be talking about is 2 copies of Black Metal Dragon. Now, this card is a monster that once it goes from the field to the graveyard, you basically get to search a Red Eyes card from your deck to your hand. Now, this is not a once per turn effect, which is important because you can basically loop this more than once with Darkness Metal, so you can basically search your Darkness Metal, bring this card back, and then get to search another card. Now, the thing is that it searches Red Eyes cards. Now, on top of being able to search Red Eyes Fusion, which is the obvious thing, this is not the thing you're playing it for, because Red Eyes Fusion, if you search it after you have summoned something, it doesn't accomplish anything. But searching Red Eyes inside gives you access to not only a card that will help you bring back Dragoon during the later stages of the game, but will also give you access to 2 particular trap cards that I play in the deck that work so well with both of the strategies that are in this deck, which I'll talk about later. So this card is also a level 1 monster, which is basically a 1-for-1 target, so you can even special summon it from your deck, which gives you another extender to play in the deck for Anaconda. Such an amazing card. I've been loving this engine so much in the deck. We have, of course, the 1 copy of Darkness Metal. Even though this card is at more copies than 1 now, with the errata, even if it didn't have the errata, to be honest, in this particular deck, I don't think I would play more than 1, but with the errata, you're definitely not wanting to play more than 1 in pretty much any type of deck you're playing against, maybe if you're playing pure Red Eyes, but you're searching this with your Black Metal Dragon, and since you have summoned Striker Dragon to link away the Black Metal, you basically banish this Striker Dragon, revive the Black Metal, then make the Anaconda, and get another search with Black Metal, because I mentioned it's not once per turn. It's such a plus thing you can do in the deck that gives you so much advantage. And we have 1 copy of Red Eyes Wyvern. This is a card you're going to be sending with your Red Eyes Insight to the graveyard to get a search, and it's a monster that can revive Dragoon. So basically, if you have not normal summon during a turn, during the end phase, you can banish this card from the graveyard to special summon a Red Eyes monster from your graveyard, which most of the time is going to be Dragoon. Unless you already have Dragoon on the field, you can even bring back Darkness Metal to get another monster during the following turn. So it's a really good card. And again, all those breaks in Dark Magician, they're not as breaky as it would be in any other deck because of Illusion of Chaos. You can always put them back and send them to the graveyard from your deck like you would always want. For the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Soul Servant. This card is absolutely amazing for the deck. Gets you pretty much any card you want, you stack it, and then you use this card's effect to draw cards. Even if you don't even have a Dark Magician in the graveyard, sometimes maybe you can even draw cards with Upstart Goblin, which is another card I'm really liking in the deck, because this is a build that I'm playing 45 cards, but even though I'm playing 45 cards, because of this card right here, and of course Dark Magical Circle, which serves a similar purpose, you still want to play Upstart Goblin, because it just basically gets you any card you want. Yes, it's like a 2-card combo, but still it doesn't matter because you get any card you want into your deck. So even though you are playing more than 40 cards, in Dark Magician, it's still justified to play Upstart Goblin if you're playing more than 40. For the rest of the Dark Magician spells, we have 1 copy of Dark Magical Circle. This card at 1 is fine. You can always search it or recycle it with your Soul Servant, because Soul Servant stacks cards from the graveyard as well. If it gets banished, it's not the end of the day, because this is not a fully Dark Magician based type of deck. You're not going to rely on banishing with your Dark Magical Circle too much, just because you have so easy access to Dragoon every single time at every single point of the game. So basically you're relying on this card to disrupt, so Dark Magical Circle kind of becomes redundant at some points, but still as a one-off, it's still a great card. We have 1 copy of Magician Salvation. This is the fodder of the deck, because you would be able to search your Eternal Sword normally, but the thing is, you want to search this card instead of Eternal Soul first, because you can set your Eternal Soul from the deck and have a spell card on the field that can stay for the effect of Magician Souls to get you to another card. Or if you don't have access to Magician Souls, you can still use this card's second effect to bring back Dark Magician gear from the graveyard when you summon your Dark Magician to get some more damage on board, so you can potentially go for a game, because if you have a Dragoon that negated something, it gets to 4000 attack, and if you bring back a Dark Magician with 2500, that's 65, so if you use this card's effect to bring back a Dark Magician girl, you have 85 on board, so that's basically OTK if your opponent doesn't have any monsters. And we have 1 copy of Secrets of Dark Magic. I still like this card in the deck. I feel like it's a searchable card that can help you push for a game, or basically even sometimes play around cards. For example, if you have this in a Dark Magician in your hand, if your opponent likes Veilers or Imperms, your Rod, you can chain this to go for a Dark Magicians and still get your search off. So as a searchable of. I think it's fine. You can consider cutting it. It's not the best card in the deck, but I just feel like it's good enough for me to be able to play it just because it's a one-off that's searchable. For the rest of the spells, we have 3 copies of Preparation of Rites. Of course, you have to play this card in the deck. You search your Illusion of Chaos. If you already have your Illusion of Chaos, or if you already have the cards you would search with Illusion of Chaos, you can search your Sauravis to get some more protection. Amazing card. If you draw multiple copies, you can send them to the graveyard with your Magician Souls to draw more cards. They're discard fodder for Dragoon. You just do whatever you want these. Now, for the Red Eye spells, we have, of course, 3 copies of Red-Eyes Fusion. This card just makes Dragoon, and you don't really mind too much if you cannot summon other stuff, because sending your Dark Magician to the graveyard means that you will be able to get another monster on board during your opponent's turn, so you will be able to use your Eternal Soul and the Red Eyes card I'm going to show you once we get to the trap cards. You can still get your Dark Magician back from the graveyard, so this card just gives you a lot. If you have your Circle, you will be able to go for a Banish, and it's a card that even if you don't want to activate it and you want to go for Anaconda, worst case scenario, again, it's a spell card. You can discard it for Dragoon, you can discard it for Magician Souls to draw cards. It doesn't matter if you draw multiple copies, and going second, this card is actually really good because going second Dragoon is a card that your opponent does not want you to get on the field. So if you hard draw Red Eyes Fusion or even multiple copies of Red Eyes Fusion, being able to activate these and bait cards like Griffon Rider is super crucial to be able to play around your opponent's board. So it's a really good card, and I would absolutely max it out if you're playing a deck like this, especially in a Red Eyes build like this one, which focuses a lot more than Red Eyes than a normal Dark Magician deck would. We have 3 copies of Red Eyes Insight. Now this card in this particular build does not only search Red Eyes Fusion. When you see this card in other profiles, in pretty much any type of deck that plays this, you always search Red Eyes Fusion. But the thing is, there are other good cards you can play, especially in a more Red Eyes based deck, that are trap cards that you can search with this card. So even if you can summon your Anaconda, it's not like this card is dead. You have other targets, and sending Red Eyes Wyvern from your deck to the graveyard is super important because, again, I mentioned that keeping Dragoon on the board is the game of this deck. You have to have cards that will keep bringing back Dragoon from the graveyard if your opponent deals with it, or keep summoning more copies of Dragoon as the game progresses, so you can make sure you basically overwhelm your opponent with a monster that is basically impossible to deal with at multiple copies. So this is why this card gives you a lot more options. Now we play some one-off spells. First one is the 1 copy of Magicalized Fusion. Because of Anaconda, you play multiple copies of Anaconda, so during the late game you can make another one and then copy this card to basically make another Dragoon. We play 1 copy of 1-for-1. You can get your Black Metal Dragon from the deck with this card, which will give you a surge, but if you have Black Metal Dragon, or if you don't want Black Metal Dragon, it's a card that can get Magician Souls from the deck. Now, yeah, you won't be able to get to Dark Magician with Magician Souls because you basically summon it from the deck without using its own effect, but still it's another monster on the field for Anaconda, and it can basically unbrick you if you have drawn a lot of spells and traps that you don't really want to use, so you can basically try to dig for a normal summon that would get you to an Anaconda, or maybe another card for Disruption if you already have another normal summon to go for Anaconda. It just gives you a lot, and I would highly recommend playing this card if you're planning to play a deck like this. We play 1 copy of Call by the Grave for some more protection, and the 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. I'm gonna mention this again. Yes, this is a more than 40 card deck. It's a 45 card deck, so before you criticize Upstart Goblin in the deck, just keep in mind that you can stack your deck in this deck with Magician, with your Soul Servant and your Dark Magical Circle. You can stack your deck so you can basically determine what you're going to draw with your Upstart Goblin. So it's not a bad card to play if you're playing it in Dark Magician. It was basically the same theory with Strikers back in the day. Most people were playing Upstart even if they were playing more than 40 cards because it was a 3rd spell in graveyard. So if Upstart has a purpose aside from just being a random draw, it's still justified to play if you're playing more than 40 cards. For the trap cards, we have 1 copy of Eternal Soul. You don't need more than 1 because A, you don't really care too much about Dark Magician coming back because I mentioned that Dragoon is basically what you're trying to go for the deck 100% of the time, and B, because of the next card I'm going to show you, which is the 1 copy of Return of the Red Eyes. Now, there are 2 trap cards you can search with Red Eyes Insight, aside from Red Eyes Fusion, that you can also obviously always search to get for Dragoon, that give you a lot of value, and this is the first one. This is basically another copy of Eternal Soul from the deck. So what this card does is that the continuous trap that if you control a Red Eyes monster, you can target a normal monster in your graveyard and special summon it. It doesn't say that you have to bring back a Red Eyes monster, it brings back any normal monster. So you can still bring back Dark Magician with this card to basically trigger Circle. So even if you can't get access to your Eternal Soul, if you have a Red Eyes Insight, you can search this card instead, which is basically playing many more copies of Eternal Soul in the deck by just following a different route. So you can use this card to bring back your Dark Magicians, and if this card is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can target a Red Eyes monster in your graveyard and you can special summon it. So if your opponent destroys this without remembering that this effect exists, you can potentially bring back a Dragoon from the graveyard. But even if you don't have a Dragoon from the grave, you can still bring back maybe the original Red Eyes for some more damage, or the Darkness Metal to bring back another monster. It does have a lot of purposes, so even if your opponent deals with this card, you're still going to get a plus, which is obviously always good in my books for any type of card. And we have the 1 copy of Red Eye Spirit. This is a pretty simple card. It's a normal trap card that says target a Red Eyes monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Can you guess what the purpose of this card is? Yes, bring back Dragoon from the graveyard. I mentioned that Dragoon is always the play. You want to always bring back Dragoon. You have Red Eyes Wyvern to bring it back, you have this card to bring it back. It's very, very easy to stick Dragoon on the field, even if your opponent deals with it somehow, and then bring out another one, and if you have multiple copies of Dragoon, you basically win the game right there. So these two trap cards, both being searchable with Red Eyes Insight, and of course your Black Metal Dragon, makes this whole Red Eyes package for a Dark Magician deck be very, very useful, and it has a synergy that I never thought I would actually find in something like this, but the more I tested it, I just felt that it worked really, really well. Now, you need to play more cards to disrupt your opponent, because if you're playing only a Dragoon type based deck, you're not going to see your Circle and your Eternal Soul combo too consistently, because you don't really want to brick by playing more copies, so you need to play generic cards. Now, you can replace generic cards for pretty much anything you like. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but the cards that I've been enjoying a lot in Dark Magician lately are 3 copies of Torrential Tribute, because this card does pretty much everything you need. Your Dragoon does not get destroyed with this card. Your Dark Magicians, even if you brought them back with Eternal Soul, you want to put them back in the graveyard, so you don't mind them getting destroyed, and it's a really good card going first and second, especially when you combine it with the next card, which is 3 copies of Solemn Strike. These two cards together are the iconic duo of breaking boards going second, and they're really good cards on their own, of course, going first as well. So these are the types of cards you can play that you can also use going first and second, aside from playing hand traps. I feel like hand traps are just such low value that in a deck like this, drawing one hand trap doesn't really do much, because if you want to play hand traps, I think now you have to play like 10 or more and hopefully draw more than one in order to be able to use them consistently going second, because one hand trap does not stop your opponent these days. So I feel like these cards on their own can stop your opponent when you're going first by setting them, and going second, if you manage to see both of them, then you can basically clear any type of board. So I've just been enjoying these so much in Dark Magician. For the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. This card at 3 in this particular build, yes, you can play 2, but I feel like the 3rd copy comes up more often than I would imagine, just because of the way this deck is built. In normal Dark Magician, you would never summon a 3rd copy, but this build focuses so much around summoning this card that it's very, very easy to summon all 3 in one single duel. So I feel like even though the extra deck is not super tight, I couldn't figure out anything else that would basically be better than a 3rd copy of Dragoon. So yeah, I feel like playing 3. I know this is expensive, but Dark Magician is not a budget deck right now, so if you can afford the entire deck, I feel like the 3rd copy of Dragoon shouldn't be that much of a problem for you. We have 1 copy of the Dark Magicians. This is still a card that I'm going to play no matter what. I just love this card so much, and I feel like it just saves you so many weird scenarios that just keeps you drawing more cards, and as long as this card stays on the field for an extended period of time, the amount of advantage that you can get is basically absurd, and being able to float into both DMG and DM means that if your opponent deals with it, you're going to have to deal with something else eventually, and if you have Circle, it makes your opponent think twice before dealing with this card, because you know that you're going to get something banished if you deal with this card while Circle is on the field. For the Xyz monster, we have 1 copy of Ebon Illusion Magician. This is a monster you can summon with your level 7 monsters. Having access to Darkness Metal makes this card so much easier to summon, because you can keep bringing back your vanilla Red Eyes from the graveyard, which is a level 7 monster as well. So as long as you have access to 1 Dark Magician and you keep bringing back your Red Eyes, you can keep summoning more level 7 monsters, which makes this card very easy to summon. It gets you access to another Dark Magician, it banishes another card, and of course, the main purpose of having an Xyz monster in a deck you can summon it is going to the 1 copy of Zeus, because any deck that can make Xyz monsters that has the space in the extra deck for it should just be using this card. This card is such a good card that if you can use it, you can basically destroy your opponent completely and wipe their entire board, and you don't really care about your own board, because this deck has so much revival with cards like Wyvern and Red Eye Spirit, which you can still get a Dragoon on the field even if you have to blow up your own board to get back into the game, so you can still get back your copies of Dragoon. For the Link monsters, we have 2 copies of Anaconda. You need the second one for the Magicalized Fusion, and sometimes the second one comes up in the case the first one gets negated and it gets dealt with. If you can manage to get your turn back by, for example, your trap cards, then you can make the second one and try to copy Red Eyes Fusion again, so I would absolutely play 2 in Dark Magicians. For the Link 1 monsters, we have 1 copy of Artemis. This card helps you go for your monster to be able to get back your Rod, because if you cannot get access to Anaconda, you need to link away this 1 copy of Rod that you have on the field in order to get it back so you can use its effect again, which is one of the worst case scenarios for the deck, but you have to cover pretty much everything when you're playing, so you need this card in your extra deck as well. We have 1 copy of Imdak, which is another dragon monster you can summon by linking away your Dark Magician so you can use it for fusion fodder for your Dragoon. We have 1 copy of Link Spider. You need to have this Link 1 monster so you can keep getting your Dark Magician off the way when you bring it back with your Eternal Soul or your Return of the Red Eyes, so you can bring it back again every single turn, so you can keep basically banishing cards with your Circle or just filling monsters for more Link fodder. We have 1 copy of Striker Dragon. For Black Metal Dragon, this card makes a lot of sense, because not only are you going to get the search for Black Metal Dragon, but you have another dragon to banish with your metal, with your Darkness Metal, and then bring back again your Black Metal to get another search. So you don't have to play anything like your put Sector Launch in the deck to basically, if you want to chain around, it's a decent card, and because it's a spell card, it's a card I was considering, but I feel like Brick doesn't justify the means of playing this card, so I don't feel like you need it. If you want to play more of a dragon-based deck with rockets and stuff, then yes, that would be able to work, but I don't feel like you need it, even though you can chain block for your black metals effect. For the Link 2s, we have just the one copy of Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. This card, as long as DPE is a thing, I feel like every deck that can summon it should play it in the extra deck, because DPE is such an impactful card that you see in pretty much 90% of the decks that you're going to face now, unless you're playing against like DDD or Flunderies or something like that for them, assuming you're playing against a meta deck. So this card just gives you a lot of value when you can summon, just gets your DPE. Your opponent is going to be forced to bring back one of the bricks from the graveyard, either Celestial or Dasher, so they won't be able to use Celestial's effect to draw 2 unless they try to link away the monster they brought back or crash it into something of your own. So you have to make your opponent play very weirdly by reviving their DPE, and of course you get another interruption on top of everything you have. We have one copy of Selene. This is another way to keep reviving your Dark Magician, so even if your opponent tries to deal with Eternal Soul and your Return of the Red Eyes, you still have another accessible way in your extra deck to keep reviving your Dark Magicians to maybe trigger your circle. And of course we have the one copy of Access Code, because Selene gives you another monster. It's not very difficult to get a lot of monsters on the field, especially with this build, which you play a lot of cards that special summon from the hand or from the graveyard because of the Red Eyes engine, so it's very easy to go to Link Climb into a Link 4, and Access Code, whenever you can summon it, it's basically the end game for every type deck. So yep, that's the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. This is a deck that I highly recommend you try it out. You're going to have a lot of fun, so if you want something different for Dark Magician, because I know that Dark Magician type of decks have become very firm on what they do and what they try to do, which this deck is not really different from what the goal is, but it's just the means of you getting there and the consistency of getting there. It's just on a different level, and it does have more options for the things you can do during the late game because of all these cards you can search with the Red Eyes package. So it's really good. It's a really good deck. I'm not sure if it's the most competitive way to play Dark Magician, but I don't really care just because of how fun it is, and since it's working, it's good enough for me. So try it out, see how it goes for you, and I guarantee that you're going to have an absolute blast playing this deck. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.